Hey guys, tonight we are going to leave the mainland behind. We're heading out onto the cold, unforgiving sea, toward a pillar of stone and light that stands against the endless churning of the waves. You can feel the salt spray on your face already, can't you? You can hear the lonely cry of a gull circling high above a place that few would ever call home. This is the world of the 18th century lighthouse keeper, a job that sounds romantic for about 5 minutes until you realize there's no Wi-Fi, the food is terrible, and your only roommate is a ghost you'll probably invent out of sheer boredom. Frankly, you probably wouldn't survive the crushing loneliness, let alone the storms. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. When you're done, drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The journey begins not with a noble proclamation or a king's decree, but with the lurch of your stomach. You are packed onto a small, stout vessel called a tender, though you feel anything but tender at this moment. The boat smells profoundly of 3 things: wet rope, dead fish, and the quiet desperation of the men who sail it. They are a taciturn crew, weathered and grim, and they look at you with a mixture of pity and contempt. They have seen men like you before, men seeking duty, or escape, or simply a wage that doesn't involve coughing up coal dust in a mine. They know where you are going, and they know that the man they bring back will be a little less whole than the man they are taking out. You try to offer a friendly nod, but they just grunt and turn back to their work, leaving you to your own queasy thoughts. The swell of the sea is relentless. It's not the dramatic, crashing fury of a storm, but a deep, nauseating rhythm of lift and fall, lift and fall. Your legs are braced against a wooden crate, your knuckles white as you grip a thick, tarry rope. You are trying very hard to focus on the horizon, a gray, featureless line where the sky and the water meet in a joyless union. It's a classic remedy for seasickness, they say, but it doesn't seem to be working. Your breakfast of stale bread and weak ale is threatening a dramatic reappearance, and you wonder if 18th century medicine has a cure for this. The answer, you suspect, involves leeches and is probably worse than the ailment itself. For hours, this is your entire world. The creak and groan of the boat's timbers, the snap of the sail in the wind, the cold, damp air that seeps into your bones. The mainland has long since vanished, erased by mist and distance. There is nothing but the gray, green water, stretching to infinity in every direction. It's a profound and humbling kind of emptiness, a liquid desert. It makes you feel impossibly small, a tiny speck of hopeful ignorance being ferried toward an even smaller speck of stone. You pull your wool coat tighter around you. It's coarse and smells faintly of sheep, a scent you find oddly comforting in this sterile, salty environment. You have a small bundle with you, containing everything you now own: a change of clothes, a well-worn book of psalms, a block of writing paper with a few sticks of charcoal, and a small, carved wooden bird your younger sister pressed into your hand before you left. It feels flimsy and foolish now, a child's trinket against the vast, indifferent power of the ocean. You wonder if you made a mistake. The thought is a cold stone in your gut, heavier than the seasickness. But there is no turning back. The contract is signed. Your post awaits. Then, one of the sailors points a leathery finger toward the horizon. "There she be," he mutters, the first words you've heard from him in hours. You squint, your eyes watering from the wind. At first, you see nothing, just the same endless gray. You blink, trying to clear your vision, and then you see it. It is not a grand, shining beacon. It is a needle, a tiny, dark sliver piercing the horizon, so thin and insignificant you could mistake it for a fleck of dust on your own eye. It seems impossible that this frail little line could be your destination, your entire world for the next year. But as the tender plows onward, the needle grows. It thickens, resolves, taking on the shape of a tower. It rises directly from the waves, a monument of sheer, obstinate stone. There appears to be no island, no spit of land, just the tower and the sea. It looks like a weapon, a spear thrust up from the depths to challenge the sky itself. There is no warmth to it, no welcome. It is a fortress of solitude, and you are its next willing prisoner. The closer you get, the more intimidating it becomes. You can start to see the details, the dark, slick stone of its base, green with algae where the waves constantly lick and foam. You see the graceful, tapering curve of the structure, designed to deflect the wind's fury. And at the very top, the lantern room, a cage of glass and iron, looking like a multifaceted insect eye staring out at the world. It is a masterpiece of engineering, a testament to mankind's refusal to be beaten by the dark. It is also, you realize, profoundly and terrifyingly alone. The final approach is the most harrowing part of the journey. The sea around the lighthouse is a treacherous cauldron of conflicting currents and submerged rocks. The sailors, now suddenly animated and focused, expertly navigate the tender through the churning water. They shout commands in a jargon you don't understand, their movements precise and economical. The roar of the waves crashing against the tower's base is a deafening, constant thunder. It's a raw, elemental sound that vibrates through the hull of the boat and up into your teeth. You finally understand that the sea is not just an obstacle. It is an active, hostile entity, and this tower is in a state of perpetual siege. There is no dock, no gentle pier to welcome you. There is only a narrow stone ledge, barely visible above the frothing surf, and a set of iron rungs ascending the curved wall. A thick rope is thrown from a door set high above the ledge, and one of the sailors catches it with practiced ease. This, you realize with a fresh wave of nausea, is how you get ashore. Your worldly possessions are bundled into a thick net and attached to a hook on a simple crane. You watch with your heart in your throat as your small trunk and crate of supplies are winched precariously upwards, swaying in the wind, before disappearing into the dark opening of the door. Then it is your turn. Grab the ladder when she swings in. The sailor yells over the roar. He means the rope ladder, which is now being lowered. It dances and twists in the wind, a flimsy invitation to your new life. You wait for the boat to rise on a swell, and in a moment of terrifying, weightless grace you leap. Your hands, clumsy and cold, find a rough, knotted rope. Your feet scrabble for purchase on the swinging rungs. For a moment, you are suspended between the boat and the tower, with the churning, icy water just feet below. The boat is already pulling away, and the stone of the tower slaps against your knees, hard and unforgiving. You cling on, your breath catching in your chest, and begin the slow, terrifying climb. Each rung is slick with salt spray. The wind tries to peel your fingers from the rope. You don't look down. You focus only on the next rung and the next, your world shrinking to the few inches of rope and wood in front of your face. Finally, a hand reaches down from the doorway. It is a bony, strong hand that grips your wrist and hauls you the last few feet onto the stone threshold. You stumble inside, collapsing onto the floor, your body trembling, your lungs burning. You have arrived. You are in a small, circular room at the base of the tower. The air is cold, damp, and thick with the smell of brine and something else. Something oily and metallic. The sound of the sea is muffled now, a distant, constant rumble that seems to be coming from the very stones around you. The man who pulled you in stands over you. He is thin, almost skeletal, with a pale, waxy complexion that suggests he hasn't seen the sun in a very long time. His hair is long and unkempt, and his eyes are the most startling thing about him. They are a pale, washed-out blue, and they seem to look right through you, focused on some distant point you cannot see. He wears the same coarse wool and canvas as you, but his are stained with grease and soot. This is the man you are replacing. He looks you up and down, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "You're the new one," he says. His voice is a dry, rasping whisper, as if he has forgotten how to use it properly. You can only nod, still trying to catch your breath. "Right," he says, turning away. The tender won't wait. The tide's turning. There is no welcome, no offer of a hot drink, no friendly handshake. There is only the urgent, practical reality of the changeover. This is not a social call, it is a changing of the guard. He leads you up a spiraling stone staircase that hugs the interior curve of the tower wall. The steps are worn smooth in the center from countless ascents and descents. There are no windows, only the occasional narrow slit that lets in a sliver of gray light and a mournful whistle of wind. The climb is dizzying. The tower, which seems so solid from the outside, feels like a hollow tube, and with each upward step, the sound of the sea below fades, replaced by the ever-present sighing of the wind around the lantern above. The first floor you come to is the storage room. It is packed to the ceiling with barrels. "Oil," the keeper says, rapping a knuckle on one of them. "Wild oil. The lifeblood." He points to other crates. "Salt beef, hardtack, dried peas. Your rations for the next 6 months. There's a water cistern below, rain-fed. Don't waste it." He says it all in the same flat, emotionless tone. He speaks of survival as if it were a simple, albeit tedious, list of chores. You see sacks of flour, some potatoes already beginning to sprout eerie white tendrils in the gloom, and a few small barrels of beer. It's a well-known, if quirky, historical tidbit that many keepers, especially in British-run lighthouses, received a portion of their pay in beer, considered safer to drink than stored water, and certainly more morale-boosting. You make a mental note to ration that particular supply very, very carefully. The next floor up is the living quarters. It is a single, circular room that serves as kitchen, bedroom, and sitting room all in one. The furniture is sparse and brutally functional. A narrow cot built into the curve of the wall, a small cast iron stove, a single wooden chair, and a table bolted to the floor. A few pewter plates and a mug sit on a shelf. It is the cell of a monk, stripped of everything but the barest necessities for survival. The outgoing keeper points to a stack of books on the floor next to the cot. "Log books," he says. "You write in it every day. Wind direction, weather, ships sighted, oil consumed. Everything. The Trinity House supervisors check them." Trinity House, the official authority for lighthouses in England, was notoriously strict. The logbook was not a diary for your feelings. It was a legal document, a record of your diligence. Historians still argue whether this obsessive mandatory record-keeping was purely for administrative purposes or if it was a tacitly understood tool to help keepers maintain a sense of order and sanity, a way to structure the vast, empty hours and prove to themselves that one day was different from the last. The man taps the fresh, empty logbook on the table. "Don't miss a day," he warns, and for the first time, there is a flicker of intensity in his dead eyes. He turns and continues his ascent, and you follow, your legs beginning to ache from the climb. The next level is the service room, and the air here changes. It smells strongly of brass and oil, and the space is dominated by a huge, intricate piece of machinery. It is a clockwork mechanism of weights, gears, and governors. The rotation, he explains. Some lights are fixed. This one turns, gives a flash every 30 seconds. You wend it every 4 hours, like a grandfather clock. A very, very big grandfather clock. He shows you the massive crank handle. The weights drop down the center of the tower. Don't let them reach the bottom. Ever. The responsibility is immense. It's not just about keeping a light on. It's about maintaining a precise, life-saving rhythm. For a ship captain navigating by your signal, a flash that is 2 seconds late could be the difference between a safe passage and a watery grave. You touch one of the brass gears. It's cool and solid, a marvel of 18th century engineering. It requires constant cleaning, polishing, and oiling. It is a demanding, mechanical beast that you must tend to without fail. You suddenly feel less like a keeper and more like a simple human cog in a much larger machine of stone and metal. Finally, you climb a last, steep ladder and emerge into the lantern room, and you forget to breathe. After the gloom and confinement of the tower below, this room is a palace of light. It is a circular chamber encased in thick, triangular panes of glass, offering a staggering 360-degree view of the sea and sky. Even on this overcast day, the light is brilliant. And in the center of the room, on a massive pedestal, is the source of the lighthouse's power. This is the era before the revolutionary Fresnel lens, that beautiful beehive of prisms that could magnify a flame into a blinding beam. What you see before you is something more brute force. It is a chandelier of massive Argand lamps. This was a major innovation of the time, a lamp with a circular, hollow wick that allowed air to flow both inside and outside the flame, creating a light far brighter and steadier than a simple candle or ordinary oil lamp. There are 24 of them, arranged in a circle. Behind each lamp is a curved, bowl-shaped reflector, made of copper and polished to a mirror shine. It looks like a collection of miniature suns, waiting to be born. This is the work, the keeper whispers, his voice filled with a strange reverence. This is all that matters. He runs a finger along one of the copper reflectors, and it comes away clean. You polish them every morning, every single one, with whiting and spirits, until you can see your own terrified face in them. He's not joking. Any speck of dust, any film of soot, will dull the beam and diminish its reach. He shows you the wicks, explaining how to trim them perfectly level to prevent smoking. An uneven wick creates soot, and soot on the inside of the lantern glass is a keeper's cardinal sin. You clean the glass, inside and out, every day. Even if it looks clean, you clean it. He hands you a soft chamois cloth. The gulls will be your enemy. Their mess is corrosive. You get the distinct impression that a large part of your job will be, essentially, window washing in the most extreme environment imaginable. A very expensive life or death kind of window washing. He explains the nightly ritual, lighting each lamp in sequence, checking the flames, adjusting the wicks for a perfect, smokeless burn. He speaks of the light with a passion that is absent when he speaks of anything else. It is his child, his God, his entire reason for being. And now, it is to be yours. He gives you one last piece of odd advice, a quirky tidbit passed from keeper to keeper. And never, ever whistle in the lantern room, he says, his eyes wide and serious. It's bad luck. It summons the wind. You don't know if he's serious or just testing you, but you make a solemn vow to become the most unmusical man on the entire coast. The tour is over. You descend the endless stairs in silence. Back at the entrance, the tender's horn blares a mournful, impatient sound. It is time. The outgoing keeper grabs his small bundle of possessions. He doesn't look at you. He just moves toward the door, toward his escape. He pauses on the threshold for a moment, his back to you. Keep the light. he says, and the words hang in the air between you. It is not a suggestion. It is a commandment. Then he is gone, scrambling down the rope ladder with an agility that belies his gaunt frame. You watch from the doorway as he drops onto the deck of the tender. He doesn't look back. Not once. You stand there for a long time, watching the small boat pull away from the tower. It pitches and rolls in the waves, growing smaller and smaller, until it is just a dark speck against the gray horizon. Then it vanishes, and you are alone. The silence that descends is unlike any you have ever known. It is not merely the absence of noise, it is a physical presence. It presses in on you, thick and heavy. The only sounds are the ones that have been there all along, but which you can now truly hear for the first time. The deep, resonant boom of the waves hitting the base of the tower, a sound that you feel in your chest cavity, and the high, lonely cry of the wind as it whips around the lantern. You are the only human being for miles. There is no one to talk to, no one to ask for help. You are a king in a kingdom of stone, water, and sky, a kingdom of one. The immense weight of your responsibility settles onto your shoulders. There are ships out there, somewhere beyond the horizon, navigating treacherous waters, their crews trusting in a light they cannot yet see. They are trusting in you. You close the heavy oak door, the sound of the bolt sliding home echoing in the sudden confines of the tower. The sound is so final, you are locked in. Or perhaps the rest of the world is locked out. You take a deep, shuddering breath, the air tasting of salt and cold stone. You are an island, inside a fortress on an island of rock. You look up the spiraling darkness of the staircase. The sun is beginning to set, the gray light fading from the narrow windows. Your work is about to begin. Your first night. You must not fail. You must keep the light. The first climb back up to the lantern room is different. Before, you were a visitor, an apprentice. Now, you are the sole custodian. Each step you take up the winding stair feels heavier, imbued with the weight of your new purpose. You carry with you a tinderbox and a lit oil lantern, its small flame casting huge, dancing shadows that make the curved walls seem to sway and breathe around you. The air in the service room is cold, the great clockwork mechanism a silent, brass skeleton in the gloom. You pass through it, up the final ladder, and emerge once more into the glass cage at the pinnacle of the world. The view is breathtaking. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky bruised with purple, orange, and a deep, velvety blue. The sea has turned from gray-green to an inky, restless black. You are floating in the twilight, a silent observer between the heavens and the depths. But there is no time for poetry. Darkness is coming, and with it, the ships that depend on you. The process of lighting the lamps is a delicate, nerve-wracking bullet. You move from one Argand lamp to the next, your small lantern your only guide. You open the glass housing of the first lamp, the scent of cold whale oil sharp in your nostrils. You check the wick one last time, ensuring it is trimmed perfectly flat. Using a sliver from your tinderbox, you strike a spark from your flint and steel. It takes 3 tries, your cold fingers feeling clumsy and thick. The sparks die uselessly. A flicker of panic tightens your chest. What if you can't do it? What if the damp has gotten to your tinder? You take a deep breath, shield the tinderbox with your body, and strike again. A tiny ember glows to life. You gently blow on it, coaxing it, feeding it a tiny twist of lint until a small, brave flame appears. You use this to light the wick of your hand lantern, and from that, you touch the flame to the circular wick of the great lamp. It catches instantly, blossoming into a ring of pure, white light, astonishingly bright and perfectly silent. It is a captured piece of daylight, a domestic sun. The heat from it begins to press back the chill in the room. 1 down, 23 to go. You repeat the process, a slow and methodical circle dance around the central pillar of light. Each time a new lamp ignites, the room becomes exponentially brighter, the polished copper reflectors grabbing the light and flinging it back with ferocious intensity. By the time you are halfway through, you can barely look at the lamps directly. The room is awash in a brilliant, almost painful glare. Shadows have been utterly vanquished. When the final lamp is lit, the effect is overwhelming. You are standing in the heart of a man-made star. The heat is immense, and the silence is unnerving. You expected a roar, a hiss, but the clean, burning Argand lamps are nearly soundless. It is the light itself that feels loud, a physical pressure on your eyes and skin. You quickly close the glass housings, your movements becoming more efficient, more practiced. You adjust the flow of oil to each lamp, watching the flame for any sign of smoke, any flicker of imperfection. They all burn with a steady, serene intensity. You have done it. The light is alive. Now you must make it move. Descending back to the service room feels like entering a cave after staring at the sun. Your eyes swim with dancing spots of light. Here, the great machine awaits your command. You find the heavy iron crank handle, fitting it onto the main axle of the winding mechanism. The initial turn requires all your strength. You put your shoulder into it, grunting with the effort, and with a deep, groaning sound, the gears begin to engage. The immense weights, each one a solid block of iron heavier than you are, begin their slow ascent up the central shaft of the tower. It is a battle against gravity, a constant, grueling process of cranking the handle round and round. Your arms burn, your back screams, but you keep turning. You are winding the heart of the tower. A rhythmic clank, clank, clank echoes in the stone chamber as the pawls engage the ratchet gears, holding the weights in place. After what feels like an eternity, the weights are at the top. The mechanism is fully wound. With a final, satisfying thunk, you engage the governor, and the great machine comes to life. Slowly, majestically, the entire lantern apparatus above you begins to turn. You can't see it, but you can feel the subtle vibration through the floor, a deep, rhythmic pulse. The lighthouse has a heartbeat, and you are the one who started it. Your first night watch is a lesson in a new kind of time. The clock on the wall of your living quarters becomes the master of your universe. Every 4 hours, you must make the long, dizzying climb back up to the service room to win the mechanism again. In between, you sit at your small table, the logbook open before you. You meticulously note the time, the calm weather, the direction of the gentle breeze. You try to read your book of Psalms, but the words seem to swim on the page. Your mind is alert, thrumming with a mixture of adrenaline and anxiety. Every creak of the tower, every shift in the wind's low moan, sounds like a potential disaster. You walk to one of the narrow windows, peering out into the absolute blackness. And then you see it. A sweeping blade of brilliant white light, slicing through the dark, illuminating a patch of churning sea, before disappearing again. 30 seconds of darkness. And then there it is again. Your light, your work. A feeling of immense pride swells in your chest, so powerful it almost makes you dizzy. You are a sentinel, a guardian. You are pushing back the dark. The novelty, however, begins to wear off around 3 in the morning. The coffee you brewed on your small stove is bitter and gritty, but the warmth is welcome. The second and third windings of the clockwork are even more exhausting than the first, your body aching with a deep fatigue. You find yourself nodding off in your chair, your head jerking up at the slightest sound. This isn't a job where you can be neglectful. Falling asleep on watch is the ultimate failure, a dereliction of duty with potentially fatal consequences. You stand up, stretching your stiff limbs. and begin to pace the small circular room. You trace the mortar lines between the stones with your finger. You count the number of rivets in the stovepipe. You start to understand how the previous keeper's eyes got that vacant, faraway look. You are fighting a war not just against the sea and the dark, but against the crushing, relentless tide of monotony. You finally doze off for an hour just before dawn, slumped over the table, and wake with a crick in your neck and the taste of stale coffee in your mouth. The first rays of grey light are beginning to filter through the window. Your first night is over. You survived. But as you soon learn, the night is the easy part. The day is for work, hard physical and endlessly repetitive work. Your day begins with the extinguishing of the light. You climb to the lantern room, now cool and dim in the morning light, and carefully put out each of the 24 lamps. The smell of unburnt whale oil is thick in the air. Then the cleaning begins. It is a ritual, a set of sacred tasks that you must perform in the exact same order, every single day. First, the glass. You start on the inside of the lantern, wiping away the faint film of soot that has accumulated overnight. It's a meticulous, painstaking job, requiring you to contort your body to reach every corner of the triangular panes. You use a soft cloth and a mixture of water and vinegar, polishing until the glass is so clear it seems to disappear. Then comes the outside. You unlatch a small, heavy door and step out onto the narrow iron gallery that encircles the lantern room. The change is immediate and violent. The wind whips at your clothes, roaring in your ears. The height is terrifying. The sea churns more than 100 feet directly below you. There is only a single, low iron railing between you and oblivion. You cling to it with one hand, your bucket of water in the other, and begin the perilous task of scrubbing the gold droppings and salt spray from the outer panes. It's like being a fly on the wall of a giant, and a very angry god is trying to blow you off. You try not to think about the previous keeper's warning about whistling to summon the wind. At this moment, you wouldn't dare even hum. Once the glass is pristine, you move to the heart of the apparatus, the reflectors. This is the most time-consuming and vital task of all. You take your pot of whiting, a fine abrasive chalk powder, and a bottle of spirits. You apply a small amount of paste to a soft leather cloth and begin to polish the first of the 24 copper dishes. You work in small, tight circles, your arm moving with a steady, rhythmic motion. The goal is not just to make it clean, but to burnish the surface to a perfect, flawless mirror. You can feel the faint drag of the polish, hear the soft, whispering sound it makes against the metal. It's a meditative process. You lose track of time, your world shrinking to the circle of copper in front of you. You polish and polish, wiping away the residue, inspecting the surface from every angle, hunting for the tiniest smudge or imperfection. Your reflection stares back at you, distorted and wide in the curved metal. After weeks of this, you begin to see subtle changes in that reflection. Your face is thinner, your eyes are wider, and your skin has taken on the same pale, indoor pallor as the keeper before you. One by one, you restore each reflector to its maximum brilliance. It is a task that takes hours, and by the end, your arm and shoulder ache with a deep, satisfying burn. This is not just cleaning, it is a form of worship at the altar of light. Next are the lamps themselves. Each one must be disassembled, cleaned, and refilled. You drain the remaining oil, carefully filtering it for reuse. You wipe every component, from the brass fittings to the glass chimneys, until they are free of grease and grime. The most delicate task is trimming the wicks. You use a special pair of sharp, flat scissors. The cut must be perfectly level, without a single stray thread. A tiny snag, an almost invisible imperfection, will cause the flame to burn unevenly producing smoke that will suit up your freshly polished reflectors and glass. It requires a surgeon's steady hand and a jeweler's eye for detail. This is a level of meticulousness you never knew you possessed. Back home, you were never this careful with anything. Here, carelessness can get people killed. You are beginning to understand the immense, interconnected chain of dependencies. A poorly trimmed wick leads to a smoky flame, which leads to a sooty reflector, which leads to a dimmer beam, which could lead to a ship missing its mark by a few hundred yards, which could lead to it striking a rock and sinking with all hands. Your tiny, repetitive actions have huge, far-reaching consequences. By midday, the lantern room is restored to its pristine state, ready for the coming night. But your work is far from over. Now begins the heavy lifting. The Argand lamps are thirsty. The entire apparatus consumes several gallons of oil every night. A key part of your job, a mainstream fact of your existence, is keeping the service room tank full. This means hauling the oil from the storage room at the base of the tower. You descend the 97 steps. You have counted them. Of course you have. To the ground floor. You manhandle a heavy barrel of whale oil into position beneath the hoist. Then, using a hand-cranked winch, you begin the back-breaking task of lifting it, inch by agonizing inch, up the central shaft of the tower. The winch groans in protest. The rope creaks under the strain. Your muscles bunch and burn. It takes the better part of an hour to raise a single barrel 10 stories high. Once it's up, you have to carefully decant the thick, viscous oil into the feeder tank. The smell is overpowering, a fishy, greasy odor that clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin. You suspect you will never get rid of it. You will probably go to your grave smelling faintly of boiled whale. Your life quickly falls into this unyielding rhythm, a cycle dictated not by whim or fancy, but by the fundamental mechanics of your environment. Wake at dawn. Extinguish the lamps. Clean the glass inside and out. Polish the reflectors. Clean and trim the wicks, haul oil. Wind the clockwork. Clean the living quarters. Prepare your meager meal. Write in the logbook. Light the lamps at dusk. Stand watch through the night. Wind the clockwork. Wind the clockwork. Wind the clockwork. Sleep for a few precious hours. Repeat. Each day is identical to the last and to the next. Time loses its linear progression and becomes a circle, a great wheel you are strapped to. You find yourself performing tasks without conscious thought, your body knowing the routine so intimately that your mind is free to drift. Historians still argue whether the rigid, repetitive lifestyle of a keeper was a form of profound mental discipline that kept them sane, or if it was, in fact, the very thing that slowly eroded their minds, a self-imposed prison of routine that eventually broke them. From the inside, you can tell them it feels like both at the same time. In the brief moments of respite, usually in the afternoon after the heavy work is done, you find ways to occupy yourself. You read your book of Psalms so many times the pages become soft as cloth. You spend an hour every day just staring at the sea, learning its moods. You give names to the different wave patterns, the different shades of gray and green. You watch the gulls, your sworn enemies in the battle for clean glass, and learn their habits, their squabbles, their hunting techniques. You are a naturalist with a steady population of one species, and one afternoon, while scrubbing the floor beneath your small table, your fingers trace a set of faint scratches on the underside of the wood. You look closer. It is a carving, crudely but lovingly done. It's a tiny, perfect rendering of a three-masted ship. It sails full, and next to it the initials TG and the year 1768. Thomas Gaskell, perhaps. You checked the old logbooks. Yes, there he was. He kept this light for 2 years. This tiny carving is a quirky, secret message across time. a whisper from one lonely man to the next. A simple, profound statement, "I was here." You run your finger over the ship and feel a strange sense of kinship, of belonging to a long, lonely line of men who have polished this same copper and watched this same sea. You decide, then and there, that you will leave a carving of your own when your time is done. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, you feel the familiar pull of the routine. It is time to prepare for the night. You check the oil levels. You give the clockwork gears a final wipe down. You climb to the lantern room for a last inspection. Everything is ready. Everything is in its place. The fear and uncertainty of that first day have been replaced by a deep, weary competence. You have mastered the rhythm of the light. You are no longer just a man in a tower. You are the beating heart within the stone ribs, the waking mind in the glass skull. The sun touches the horizon, and you reach for your tinderbox. The great wheel of your day is about to complete another turn. The change, when it comes, is not loud or dramatic. It is a quiet, unnerving shift in the world's breathing. For weeks, your life has been governed by predictable rhythms, the rhythm of the tides, the rhythm of the sun, the rhythm of the great clockwork heart of the tower. You have become so attuned to this metronome of existence that you can feel the slightest deviation in its beat. It begins with the air. One afternoon, the constant, playful sea breeze that has been your companion simply stops. The air becomes heavy, thick, and unnaturally still. A strange, oppressive humidity settles over everything, making the cold stone of the tower feel slick and greasy to the touch. You stand on the gallery outside the lantern room, ostensibly to perform your daily cleaning, but really to feel the strange new atmosphere. The sea, usually a shifting tapestry of blues and greens, has become a single dark, oily sheet of lead gray, swelling and falling with a slow, deep, almost nauseating motion, as if some colossal creature is stirring in the depths below. The second sign is the gulls. They are gone, every single one of them, for months. They have been your constant noisy and irritating neighbors. You have cursed them, thrown pebbles in their general direction, and waged a daily war against their acidic messes on your pristine lantern glass. Now, their absence is a deafening silence. The sky is empty. They have sensed what you are only just beginning to suspect, and with an instinctual wisdom you cannot possess, they have fled to the relative safety of the mainland. You are left alone with the swelling sea and the silent, waiting sky. A low, yellowish-brown haze gathers on the horizon, a stain that slowly spreads and swallows the pale afternoon sun. A shiver, entirely unrelated to the cold, runs down your spine. You remember the old keeper's superstitious warning about whistling to summon the wind. You haven't whistled, not once, but it feels as if some other, greater fool has been whistling up a hurricane. You abandon the rest of your outdoor chores and secure the heavy lantern room door, the bolt shooting home with a sound of grim finality. You spend the rest of the afternoon in a state of controlled, methodical urgency. Every task you perform is imbued with a new weight. You double, check the latches on the narrow windows. You consolidate the supplies in the ground floor storage room, moving the sacks of flour and peas to the highest shelves, away from any potential seepage. You bring an extra cask of water and a supply of hardtack biscuits up to your living quarters, just in case the lower levels become inaccessible. It's a strange feeling, preparing for a siege when your fortress is already the most isolated place on Earth. You are battening down the hatches on a ship that is permanently moored in the path of destruction. With every task, you glance out the windows, watching the sky curdle from a sickly yellow to a deep, bruised purple. The wind has returned, not as a breeze, but as a low, mournful moan that seems to come from all directions at once. It is the sound of a vast and ancient sadness. Lighting the lamps tonight is not a calm ritual. It is a race. The darkness is falling hours ahead of schedule, a thick, unnatural twilight that smothers the world. By the time you ascend to the lantern room, the wind is a steady, rising hum, vibrating through the iron frame of the glass. You work quickly, your hands sure and steady from months of practice. The 24 flames blossom to life, a defiant sphere of warmth and brilliance against the encroaching gloom. You wend the great mechanism, the familiar clank, 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 a reassuring sound against the rising voice of the wind. As the great light begins its silent, sweeping turn, you feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Let the storm come, you are ready. Your light is burning. It is a single, rhythmic point of order in a world that is about to descend into chaos. You think of the ships that must be out there, their crews frantically shortening sail, their captains staring with grim faces toward the very same bruised sky. For them, your light is not a quaint feature on the horizon. It is a desperate promise of orientation, a potential anchor of hope in the maelstrom to come. You also find yourself thinking of the darker folklore of the coasts, the whispered tales of wreckers on the mainland who would, on nights like this, set up false lights to lure ships onto the rocks for plunder. Your beam becomes a weapon against them too, a sword of light cutting through the murderous dark. You have just finished your logbook entry. Wind easterly rising to gale force. Sea very rough. Barometer falling sharply. When the first great wave hits the tower. It is nothing like the familiar, rhythmic crash you have grown accustomed to. This is a physical blow, a concussive, deafening impact that travels up through the very foundations of the tower. The entire stone structure shudders violently, as if struck by a giant's fist. The pewter mug on your table leaps into the air and clatters to the floor. You are thrown against the wall, your heart hammering against your ribs. The sound is apocalyptic, a fusion of a cannon shot and a thunderclap that seems to happen right inside your skull. Before you can even recover, another one hits, and then another. The storm has arrived. The siege has begun. The world outside your narrow windows dissolves into a blur of gray fury and white foam. The methodical rhythm of the waves is gone, replaced by a chaotic, raging anarchy. Waves, impossibly huge, rise up like liquid mountains and hurl themselves against your stone pillar. Water streams down the outside of the glass panes in the lantern room, so thick that at times it feels as if you are completely submerged, a flimsy bubble at the bottom of a savage sea. The noise is a physical entity, a relentless, multi-layered assault on your senses. There is the high, shrieking whistle of the wind as it slices past the lantern, a sound like 1,000 tortured souls. Beneath that is the constant, deafening roar of the sea, a sound so deep and powerful it feels as though the world is being torn apart. And punctuating it all, every few seconds, is the bone, jarring boom of another wave striking the base, a percussive shock that makes your teeth ache. You are living inside a bell, and a furious god is trying to smash it with a hammer. Sleep is not just impossible, it is unthinkable. Your body is thrumming with a constant, low-grade vibration, a tremor of fear and awe that resonates with the shaking of the tower itself. You climb the stairs to the service room to wind the mechanism. And the journey is a treacherous ordeal. The tower is moving. It is not just shuddering with each impact. It is swaying, a slow, sickening oscillation high in the gale. Your hand grips the cold, damp stone of the wall for balance. This, you recall from your training, is by design. The tower was built by a man named John Smeaton, a pioneer of civil engineering. He had based his design on the shape of an oak tree, with a wide, solid base and a tapering trunk that could give, just slightly, in the face of the wind's fury. The stones themselves were a marvel, cut in complex, interlocking dovetail joints, locking into one another like pieces of an intricate puzzle, held together by their own immense weight and ingenious geometry. You are supposed to be reassured by this. You are supposed to marvel at the engineering that allows this stone spear to bend without breaking. But the feeling of 100-foot tower swaying beneath your feet in the heart of a hurricane is, to put it mildly, deeply unsettling. You have to place your absolute faith in the ghost of a man you've never met, trusting that his calculations were correct, his stonemasons sober, and his materials true. It's a lot to ask of a man who's currently trying not to vomit from a combination of vertigo and sheer terror. The winding of the clockwork is a desperate struggle. You brace yourself against the lurching of the tower, your boots slipping on the damp stone floor. Every ounce of your strength is required to turn the crank, your knuckles scraping against the cold iron. The machine's familiar clicks and groans are lost in the overwhelming symphony of the storm. But you do it. You wend the weights to the top, re-engage the governor, and feel the comforting, familiar vibration as the light continues its inexorable turn. The thought of that beam failing, of that rhythm being broken, is more terrifying than the storm itself. It is the only thing you have left that makes any sense. It is your one defiant duty. Back in your living quarters, you try to brew coffee, but the swaying of the tower makes the simple act of pouring water a ridiculous challenge. The stovepipe rattles and groans, and puffs of smoke are driven back down into the room by the wind's pressure. You give up, chewing on a piece of hardtack that tastes like sawdust and despair. You sit on your cot, which feels as though it's on the deck of a storm-tossed ship, and you simply endure. The night is a timeless, formless eternity of noise and motion. Strange things begin to happen in the crucible of fear and exhaustion. The shriek of the wind as it forces its way through tiny cracks in the window fittings begins to sound like speech. You hear whispers, fragments of words, distorted cries, just at the edge of hearing. You know it's the wind. You know it's a trick of the mind, the brain's desperate attempt to find patterns in the chaos. But it is profoundly unnerving. Historians still argue whether the strange auditory phenomena reported by so many keepers during great storms were simply a result of the complex acoustics of a hollow, vibrating tower, or if they were genuine hallucinations brought on by the immense psychological strain of isolation and terror. As you sit there, listening to the wind, voices whispering your name, you decide you don't really care about the distinction. Real or not, the effect is the same. You feel as though the storm is trying to talk its way inside, not just into the tower, but into your mind. Sometime after midnight, you hear a new sound, a horrible, grating, tearing sound from the floor below, followed by a rush of water. Your heart seizes. You grab your lantern and stumble down the winding stairs, your hand sliding on the damp wall. The storage room is awash. A wave of unimaginable force has smashed against the heavy oak door at the base of the tower, and while the door itself has held, the pressure has forced water through the seals around it. A frothing, ankle-deep pool of icy seawater sloshes around the barrels and crates. You see your precious sacks of flour soaked and ruined. The lower layers of potato and onion crates are submerged. Panic, cold and sharp, cuts through your exhaustion. Your carefully rationed supplies, your lifeline, are being threatened. There is nothing you can do. You cannot fight the Atlantic Ocean. You can only watch as it invades your home, a small, malevolent tongue of the storm licking at your sustenance. You retreat back up the stairs, closing the heavy door to the living quarters, feeling as though you have abandoned the lower decks of a sinking ship. You huddle at your table, the lantern casting a small, stable pool of light in the vibrating room. Your fingers find the underside of the table and trace the little carved ship, TG 1768. You wonder about Thomas Gaskell. Did he endure a storm like this? Did he sit at this very table, in this very chair, listening to the same wind voices, feeling the same gut-wrenching sway? The thought is a small, flickering comfort. He survived. The tower survived. It has weathered countless storms before this one, and it will weather countless more after you are gone. You are just a temporary passenger, a fleeting consciousness within its timeless stone shell. Your job is not to defeat the storm. Your job is to outlast it and to keep the light turning. The beam sweeps past your window, a flash of reassuring brilliance in the maelstrom, and you feel a strange sense of calm settle over you. The fear is still there, a cold knot in your stomach, but it is now overlaid with a profound, almost spiritual sense of purpose. You are the eye of the hurricane, the still point in the turning, raging world. Dawn, when it finally arrives, brings no color and no comfort. The world outside is not black anymore, but a featureless, churning gray. The storm has not broken, if anything. The wind seems even stronger, the waves even more mountainous. The new day is just a slightly brighter shade of apocalypse. You complete your morning winding of the mechanism, your movements automatic, your body a machine of aching muscles and frayed nerves. You look out from the lantern room, through the sheets of cascading water, and you can see nothing. No horizon, no sky, no sea, only the violent, gray chaos of the storm's heart. There is no sign of it ending. There is only the wind and the water, and the shuddering stone, and the lonely, rhythmic turning of your light, and the long, uncertain hours ahead. The storm does not end. It gives up. It is a slow, grudging retreat, an army falling back 1 league at a time. After what you calculate to be 2 full days and 3 eternal nights, you notice the first sign of its surrender. The concussive, bone-jarring impacts of the waves become less frequent. The gaps of relative quiet between them stretch from a few seconds to half a minute, then a minute. The tower still shudders, but it is the trembling of an exhausted beast, not the violent thrashing of one in its death throes. The wind is the next to concede. Its high-pitched, insane shriek begins to lose its edge, descending the scale into a deep, guttural howl, then a mournful moan, and finally, after another full day, into a weary, sighing breath. You find yourself holding your own breath in the newfound silences, waiting for the fury to resume, but it does not. The war is over. A long, slow armistice is being signed between the sea and the stone. When the silence finally becomes solid, it is more shocking than the noise ever was. It is a physical weight, a thick, muffling blanket that presses in on your eardrums. For days, your entire being has been calibrated to a world of overwhelming sensory input. Now, in its absence, every tiny sound is magnified into a cannon shot. The drip, drip, drip of water in the cistern below is a maddening drumbeat. The scuff of your own boot on the stone floor is a scandalous intrusion. You can hear the blood pulsing in your ears, a frantic, rushing sound. You stand perfectly still in your living quarters for a long time, just listening to the quiet, feeling it reclaim the space that the storm had stolen. The tower is no longer swaying. The floor is solid and dependable beneath your feet. You survived. The words form in your mind, but you don't dare say them aloud for fear of tempting fate. You have endured. The tower has endured. The first true dawn after the storm is a revelation. You climb to the lantern room to extinguish the lamps, and as you open the access door to the gallery, you are met not with a howling wind, but with a gentle, cool and impossibly clean breeze. The air smells of salt and rain washed clean of everything else. The sky is a pale, fragile blue, dotted with the fluffy, innocent-looking clouds of a world at peace. The sea is still a mess, a chaotic landscape of huge, rolling gray swells, but they are disorganized, their energy spent. They are the debris of a battlefield, not an active assault. You step out onto the narrow iron walkway, your hand gripping the railing, which is slick with a thick crust of salt. You walk the full circle of your domain, surveying the damage. A few of the iron railings are bent slightly inward, testament to the unimaginable force of the water. You peer down at the base of the tower, where a tangled mess of seaweed, driftwood, and unidentifiable sea wrack is piled high on the landing rock. But the tower itself, the magnificent stone pillar, is unharmed. The glass of the lantern is intact, though smeared with a thick, opaque layer of salt that makes it look like frosted glass. You press your hand flat against the cold stone of the wall. "Good work," you whisper, and you aren't sure if you're talking to the tower, to its long dead builder, or to yourself. The cleanup is a monumental task. You start at the bottom in the flooded storage room. The water has receded, but it has left behind a scene of salty devastation. The stone floor is coated in a slimy, gritty film. The lower barrels are streaked with white salt lines, and you fear for the integrity of the wood. The sacks of flour are a complete loss, a doughy, sodden mess that you have to haul, bit by heavy bit, out the door and dump into the sea. The potatoes and onions are mostly ruined. You spend an entire day salvaging what you can, scrubbing the floor with a stiff brush and hauling the damp, spoiled goods away. The physical labor is a blessing. It is simple, mindless, and exhausting. It keeps you from thinking too much about how close you came to losing your entire winter's supply of food. It keeps you from dwelling on the memory of the wind, voices, and the terrifying motion of the tower. When the lower level is as clean as you can make it, you begin the long process of reclaiming the rest of the tower from the storm's lingering touch. Every surface is coated in a fine, crystalline layer of salt that has been driven through microscopic cracks in the stone and window frames. The air itself tastes of it. You wipe down the walls, scrub the floors, wash your few linens, and polish every piece of brass in the service room until it gleams with a warm, reassuring light. And then there is the glass. The salt crust on the lantern panes is so thick you can barely see through it. Cleaning it takes the better part of 2 days. You are back to your perilous routine on the outer gallery, bucket and cloth in hand, scraping and scrubbing away the translucent grime. But this time, it feels different. It is not just a chore. It is an act of restoration, of defiance. You are erasing the storm's signature, polishing your window on the world until it is once again invisible and perfect. You are restoring order, and with the restoration of order comes the return of the profound, crushing loneliness. The storm, for all its terror, was a companion. It was a vast, powerful entity to fight against, to focus on, to endure. It filled the hours and the senses. Now, there is only the silence and the endless empty sea. The routine you fought so hard to maintain now feels like a hollow set of motions in a vacuum. You polish the reflectors, you wend the clockwork, you write in your logbook, and the silence answers with more silence. It is in this vast, echoing quiet that the peculiar habits begin to take root. They don't start all at once. They creep in, small and insidious, like weeds growing in the cracks of your sanity. It begins with you talking to yourself. At first, it's just a practical muttering as you work. Right, just one more reflector to polish, you might say, or time to check the wicks. The sound of your own voice, rough and unfamiliar in the quiet, is a small comfort. It's a proof of life. But soon, the monologues become dialogues. You start asking yourself questions and then providing the answers. Shall we have the salt beef for dinner again tonight? You'll ask the empty room. Yes, I think we shall. It's my favorite. You begin to develop complex opinions on the matter, which you then debate with yourself, out loud. You find that you win every single argument, which is one of the few perks of this particular brand of creeping madness. The sound of a human voice, even your own, becomes a vital necessity, a way to push back against the oppressive silence that threatens to swallow you whole. Then, you start to give things names. It makes them feel less like objects and more like colleagues. The great, groaning clockwork mechanism, with its steady, dependable rhythm, becomes Arthur. Arthur is a bit old and creaky, but he's reliable. You find yourself patting his brass housing after a successful winding. "Good work today, Arthur," you'll say. The small temperamental cast iron stove is named Mrs. Higgins, and you chide her when she's smoky and praise her when she burns hot. The gulls, when they finally return, are a momentous occasion. You are on the gallery when you hear the first, familiar, piercing cry. You look up to see a single gull circling the tower, then another, and another. Soon, the sky is full of them. You feel an absurd rush of emotion, as if your family has just returned from a long and perilous journey. You recognize one of them by a distinctive notch in its beak. This is the one who always leaves a particularly large mess on the north, facing pain. "Bartholomew, you old scoundrel," you shout into the wind, a huge grin on your face. Welcome home. Your relationship with them has fundamentally changed. They are no longer pests. They are your subjects. You are the lonely king of this stone pillar, and these are your unruly, feathered populace. In this new, silent world, you become acutely aware of the ghosts that inhabit the tower with you. Not supernatural ghosts, but the faint imprints of the men who came before. You spend hours poring over the old logbooks, not just for information, but for a connection. Their handwriting tells a story. The neat, precise script of one man, the hurried, messy scrawl of another. Their entries are maddeningly terse. You find the log for a great storm in 1752, an event spoken of with reverence on the mainland. The entry for that day reads simply Hurricane E&E, light maintained. That's it. 3 words to describe a hell that must have been much like the one you just endured. Historians still argue whether these famously stoic logbook entries were a form of emotional suppression that slowly drove men mad, or if the act of reducing cosmic terror to a few dry, factual words was a powerful coping mechanism, a way of taming the experience by trapping it in neat, orderly lines of ink. You look at your own entry for the storm gale severe, seas mountainous, minor flooding to stores. It looks so small, so utterly inadequate. It says nothing of the fear of the wind voices, of the bone-shaking vibrations. But writing it down did make you feel, for a moment, as if you had taken control of the memory. You had catalogued it, filed it away. This is the reality of the affliction they call Lighthouse madness. It is not a sudden, dramatic snap. It is not the wild-eyed lunacy of fiction. It is a slow, quiet, creeping erosion. It is the process by which a man, starved of all human contact, begins to remake the world in his own image. It is a blurring of the lines between the real and the imagined, the animate and the inanimate. You start to see things, fleeting shapes at the very edge of your vision. You will be in the lantern room and hear a distinct cough from your living quarters below, a sound so real you will actually call out, "Who's there?" only to be answered by the mocking silence. The memory of the storm's wind. Voices becomes a permanent fixture in your auditory landscape. You will be trimming a wick and will clearly hear your sister call your name, a phantom sound carried on the gentle sea breeze. You are not frightened by these things anymore. You are beginning to accept them as part of the texture of your new reality. Your kingdom has a population of 1, but it is filled with ghosts, named objects, and unruly gulls. It is a busy, crowded kind of loneliness. To occupy your hands as well as your mind, you take up a new hobby, a quirky tradition passed down through generations of isolated men. You become a craftsman of the sea. During the low tides, you scramble down the iron rungs to the rock base of the tower, now washed clean of the storm's debris. You search for treasures the smoothest, most strangely shaped pieces of driftwood, bleached white by the sun and salt, shells worn into jewel-like shapes by the churning waves, the deep blue and green, frosted gems of sea, glass from bottles tossed from ships long ago. You bring these offerings back up to your small room and begin to assemble them. You spend your afternoons with a small knife and a pot of fish glue, painstakingly creating an elaborate model of the tower itself out of driftwood, with tiny, shimmering shells for the lantern panes. It is a project of infinite detail and zero purpose. No one will ever see it but you. It is not for an audience. It is for you. It is a way to pour all your focus, all your meticulous energy, into something other than the polishing of reflectors and the winding of gears. It is a small act of creation in a life of repetitive maintenance. One afternoon, as you glue a tiny, perfect cowrie shell onto your model, you look at your reflection in a newly polished copper reflector. The man staring back at you is a stranger. His hair is long and wild, his beard untrimmed. His eyes are fixed and intense, accustomed to staring at distant horizons and the minute details of a wick. He looks, you think with a sudden flash of dark humor, exactly like the mad hermit from a cautionary tale. You have survived the storm. You have mastered the loneliness by filling it with your own creations. You have established a new, strange, and stable rhythm in your kingdom of 1. The question that now hangs in the silent, salty air is a simple one. Could you ever go back? Could this strange, wild-eyed man ever learn to live on the mainland again, in a world full of noise and distractions and other people? You look from your reflection to the vast, empty sea, and for the first time, you are not entirely sure you know the answer. It happens on a day like any other, a Tuesday or perhaps a Friday. The names of the days have started to lose their sharp edges, blurring into a uniform sequence of chores and tides. You are on the outer gallery, performing your morning ritual of cleaning the lantern glass, your movements so practiced they are subconscious. Bartholomew the gull is perched on the railing, watching you with a critical beady eye, as if judging your technique. The sea is calm, a gentle, swelling expanse of deep blue, and the sky is almost cloudless. It is a day of profound and peaceful monotony. And then your eyes, trained to scan the horizon for any change, any ship, catch something. It is a tiny imperfection in the perfect line where sea meets sky. A flicker of white, no bigger than your thumbnail. It is not the gray, dirty sail of a fishing smack, nor the tall, proud canvas of a merchant ship passing far to the south. This speck is different. It is growing larger, and it is heading directly for you. Your heart gives a strange, painful lurch in your chest. The supply tender. It is a feeling you cannot immediately name, a chaotic mixture of soaring, desperate relief and a sudden, sharp, territorial anxiety. For months, this tower has been your entire universe, a kingdom of 1 where you are the undisputed, albeit slightly unhinged monarch. Your routines, your named objects, your one-sided conversations with seagulls, they are all part of the intricate, fragile ecosystem of your sanity. That small white sail on the horizon is an invading army coming to disrupt the peace, but it is also bringing food and news and, most terrifying and wonderful of all, other people. A tremor runs through your hands, and you nearly drop your cleaning cloth into the sea. Bartholomew gives a squawk, as if sensing your sudden agitation, and takes flight. You are alone to face the coming intrusion. The next hour is a blur of frantic, unpracticed activity. You suddenly see your home, your sanctuary, through the imagined eyes of critical strangers. The living quarters, which seemed functional and tidy to you, now looked like the den of a wild animal. You scramble down the stairs, your mind racing. You furiously scrub the small table, hiding the half-finished driftwood model of the tower under your cot, as if it were contraband. You sweep the floor with a vigor you haven't felt in months, chasing dust bunnies that have become as familiar as old friends. You look at your reflection in a polished copper pot and are horrified. A wild man stares back, his hair a tangled mat, his beard a sprawling, untamed wilderness. You find the wick trimming scissors, the only sharp instrument you have, and attempt a frantic, clumsy trim of your beard, succeeding only in making it look even more deranged and asymmetrical. You splash your face with cold water from the cistern and put on your least stained change of clothes. You are preparing for a social encounter, with all the grace of a bear preparing for a ballet recital. You feel a frantic need to appear normal, a concept that has become abstract and foreign to you. You are waiting at the entrance door, peering through a narrow slit window, when the tender finally arrives. The familiar sounds of its approach are an assault on your new, quiet world. The creak of its timbers, the snap of its sail as it's lowered, and most of all, the voices. Men shouting commands, laughing at some shared joke. The sound of human laughter is so alien and so startlingly loud that you physically flinch. It feels like a violation of the sacred silence you have so carefully cultivated. You watch as they skillfully maneuver the boat to the base of the tower, as they throw the ropes and prepare the winch. It is the exact same procedure as your own arrival, but viewed from the other side, it feels completely different. You are no longer the frightened novice. You are the strange, isolated creature they are about to disturb. The heavy oak door swings inward, and the invasion begins. 2 men climb up from the landing stage, their boots clumping heavily on the stone. They are followed by a 3rd man, who is dressed not in the rough canvas of a sailor, but in a formal, dark coat. He is the Trinity House inspector. The sailors are broad, sun-browned men who move with a restless energy that seems too large for the confined space of the tower. They smell of things you had almost forgotten: tobacco, sweat, rain, soaked wool, and the distant, unimaginable scent of soil. Their presence is overwhelming. They fill the small room with their noise, their bulk, their sheer, unadulterated normality. "Keeper," one of them booms, his voice echoing off the curved walls. "Brought your victuals!" "And a letter or 2, I wager." He grins, and you try to smile back, but your facial muscles seem to have forgotten how. You manage a sort of stiff, grimacing nod. You try to speak, to say welcome, but the word dies in your throat, which is dry and rough from disuse. You manage only a hoarse croak. The inspector steps forward, a thin man with a severe face and eyes that miss nothing. He holds a clipboard and a pair of clean white gloves. "Logbook?" he says, his voice clipped and devoid of warmth. His visit is a well-established and often dreaded part of the supply run. This is your official examination. You hurry to your table and retrieve the leather-bound log, your hands trembling slightly as you hand it over. The inspector flips through the pages, his sharp eyes scanning your neat, daily entries. He pays special attention to your account of the great storm. He reads your 3 spare lines: gale, severe, seas mountainous, minor flooding to stores, and makes a small, noncommittal sound. He then begins his inspection of the tower. You and the 2 sailors stand in awkward silence as he moves through your home. He ascends to the service room. You hear him manually turning the crank for the rotation, listening to the sound of the gears. You pray that Arthur, your steadfast clockwork, doesn't decide to make any new and alarming noises today. Then he climbs to the lantern room, and your heart is in your throat. This is the true test. After a few minutes, he calls you up. You climb the ladder and find him standing before your array of reflectors, one white, gloved finger held aloft. This is the moment you've heard tales of. He slowly, deliberately, wipes his gloved finger across the surface of the reflector you polished just this morning. He holds it up to the light, inspecting it for the slightest trace of soot or grime. The glove is pristine. He moves to the clockwork housing in the service room and repeats the gesture. Again, spotless. He looks at you, and for the first time, a flicker of something other than stern disapproval crosses his face. It might almost be respect. Satisfactory? He clips. The light has been well kept. The word, satisfactory, is the most beautiful, glorious, and magnificent word you have ever heard in your entire life. It is a symphony in 5 syllables. The tension in your shoulders releases in a rush, and you feel light, headed with relief. While the inspector finishes his notes, the sailors begin the hard work of winching up the new supplies. The sight of the fresh provisions is intoxicating. New barrels of oil, of course, the lifeblood of your work, but also new sacks of flour, potatoes that are firm and not sprouting ghostly white tendrils, and a large cask of fresh water that tastes clean and pure, without the slightly metallic tang of the cistern. And then come the luxuries. A crate of apples. Their red and green skins so vibrant they seem to glow in the gloom of the storage room. The smell alone, crisp and sweet, nearly makes you weep. There is a small wheel of hard cheese, a packet of tea, and a bundle of newspapers and letters bound with twine. Your hands shake as you accept the bundle. It is your only link to the life you left behind, a tangible piece of the human world. The sailors work with a noisy efficiency, chattering about mainland news, a recent wedding in the port town, a local political dispute. It all sounds like a story from a foreign land. They ask you about the storm, and you try to describe it, but the words fail you. How can you explain the wind voices, the swaying of the tower, the profound, soul-shaking terror, and the strange, serene sense of purpose? You end up just shrugging. It was quite a blow, you say, and you can hear how pathetic and inadequate it sounds. The entire visit lasts less than 2 hours. It is a whirlwind of noise, inspection, and activity, and then, just as suddenly as it began, it is over. The sailors are ready to leave. The inspector hands you your wages and gives you a final, parting instruction. 6 months, keeper. See that you keep the light. He doesn't say goodbye. He doesn't wish you well. It is simply a statement of fact, a reminder of your contract. You watch them descend the ladder to the waiting tender. One of the sailors, the one who first greeted you, looks up and gives you a small, sympathetic wave. You raise your hand in return, and then they are gone. You stand in the doorway, watching the boat pull away, the sounds of their voices fading, replaced once more by the familiar cry of the gulls and the sigh of the sea. You watch until the sail is just a white speck on the horizon, the very same speck you saw with such a jolt of emotion only a few hours before. You watch until it disappears completely. The silence that rushes back in to fill the void is deeper, heavier, and more profound than ever before. It is the loudest thing you have ever heard. Historians still argue whether these fleeting, infrequent visits from the supplied tenders were a lifeline for a keeper's sanity or a cruel reminder of the world he had lost. Did the brief human contact provide a morale boost to last for the coming months, or did it merely sharpen the edges of the loneliness, making the subsequent solitude even more painful to bear? Standing there in the absolute quiet of your tower, you feel that the answer is impossibly both. You close the heavy oak door, the sound of the bolt echoing with a new and profound finality. You are once again the king of your silent kingdom. You walk over to the new supplies and pick up an apple. It is cool and heavy and real in your hand. You raise it to your lips and take a bite. The crisp, sweet, vibrant taste is an explosion in your mouth, a shocking reminder of a world of flavor and freshness you had almost forgotten. It is the most delicious thing you have ever eaten, and as the juice runs down your chin, you feel a single, hot tear trace a path through the grime on your cheek. You are alone once more, with your ghosts, your gulls, and your duties, in the heart of the immense, indifferent sea. And so, as the sun begins its slow descent, you prepare for the coming night. The motions are the same, the familiar rhythm a comforting balm after the day's disruption. You climb the winding stairs, your legs steady, your purpose clear. The new oil feels slick and clean as you top up the lamps. The scent of it is no longer overpowering. It is the scent of your work, the perfume of your singular life. You light the wicks one by one, and the lantern room fills with its customary brilliant, silent, and steady glow. You wend the great clockwork, and Arthur begins his nightly heartbeat, a slow and dependable rhythm that you feel in the very stone beneath your feet. You stand for a long time in the glass cage at the top of the world, watching your beam of light begin its silent, sweeping journey across the darkening water. It feels different tonight. It is no longer just a warning or a signal. It is a conversation. It is a steady, rhythmic pulse connecting your tiny, isolated world to that larger one beyond the horizon. A world of laughter and news and crisp, sweet apples. You are the keeper of the boundary between the chaos of the sea and the safety of the shore, a solitary monk tending a sacred flame. And in the deep, quiet stillness of the night, surrounded by the vast, breathing darkness of the water and the sky, you have found a strange and profound kind of peace. Your light sweeps out, touching the face of the deep, and returns, a silent, hopeful, and endlessly repeating promise that even in the deepest darkness, a light is being kept, and you are the